You really have to have some tough skin working the psych, y'all. Why did my patient tell me? She asked me, do I got kids? I told her no. She said, yeah, that's because you ugly as fuck and don't nobody want to have no kids with you because your kids gonna be ugly. I said, whoa, what was all that about?
Story time. So sometime ago, I had taken this contract and I always take pride in looking my absolute best on my first day. I mean, I always look put together coming to work, but on that first day, like everything is fresh. Needless to say, my nails were done. So on the first day on the unit, here comes the supervisor of another unit, beeline straight to me, telling me that if I can't peel my nail polish off in front of her at that time, then I need to go home. Mind you, I had just introduced myself to treat other nurses with fresh manicures. I was like, okay, I'll just go ahead and go home. She gonna stand there and look around and she was like, well, so that's it? You're just gonna go home? Yes, pumpkin. Yes, darling. Sugar plum, sugar stick. I'm going home. While she was looking for all the wells to say, I just went ahead and made my departure. And so instead of me calling my recruiter, I called my mother. Because I wasn't looking for a voice of reason. I was looking for a wing woman. Okay? I call my mother answers the phone, and I explain everything to her. And then she's like, the first thing she says is, that ugly, pasty bitch want to come and tell you to peel the nail polish off your nail? Mind you, I did not describe the woman to my mother. She offering you money to go and get the manicure done again? She offering you money for the money you gonna waste to come and peel off the nail polish in front of she? Did you leave? Yes, mother. Yes, I left. She said, all right then. Very good. These people, I tell you, these people and them, they bold. Yeah. Anyways, y'all, break is over. Join the Patreon.
Here's a story time about how I got my nurse bully fired. No, but in all seriousness, this was like 3 years ago when I was a new grad. I didn't know no better. Like, I was not speaking up for myself. I didn't have the hair on my chest. Like, I was just very new in the game. However, this nurse was trying to get your girl gone. I was giving a report to her one day and I told her about one of the patients that I had. I was working on a unit where it was like a peds unit. It was like a combine unit, and I was giving her a report on this patient that we had. Later on, as I'm sleeping, I get a phone call that same day from my manager asking me about some medications that I gave last night, saying, did you give this medication? Did you give this medication? I'm like, yeah. And then I also put the what do you call it? The Watt scores in there too, because the baby was withdrawn. And she pauses real quick and she says, oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure. And I was like, why? What happened? She was like, actually, you know, it's not even that big of a deal. Like, we just wanted to just confirm. But one of the nurses had said that the parents said that you never gave the med at this time. I was looking at the phone like, what are you talking about? Like, isn't it charted in Epic? It was charted in Epic, right? She said, yes, it's charted in Epic, but they're claiming that you never gave the med, so we just want to confirm. Like, what are you talking about? And me, I'm that nurse that if it's night shift, I know parents don't want to be woken up for every little single thing. So when I come into a room, I keep the lights dim, I do my assessments, I do my cares, I do everything as quickly and as clustered as I can, give the meds, I do it swiftly. Like, that's how I was trained to do it. So I told her maybe they were asleep, maybe they didn't wake up, but I gave the meds at the time that I scanned the meds. Like, it shows that I scanned and gave the med. But she's like, okay, no problem. It's just that the nurse that you gave report to was just really adamant that you didn't give the medication. Huh? So the nurse that I had given report to was the nurse who ran to my manager and said that I never gave the medication without checking our charting system. This is the same nurse that went off a parent's recollection of something that happened 3 a.m. when they were knocked out. Meanwhile, it's charted in the system. So when I came back on that night, I was pulled to the side by one of my preceptors, and she basically told me, hey, not everyone wants you here. Okay, not everyone wants to see you here doing your thing, not everyone is happy that you're here, okay? Be careful about, how you move on this unit, who you give report to, all that type of stuff, because not all the nurses are happy here. My preceptor told me that, okay? My preceptor told me that, and I love her down to this day. She warned me about this nurse. And she also told me that this nurse was on watch anyway, so The reason she was trying to find someone else to target is because she wanted to get the heat off of her. And I didn't really understand what she was talking about when she said this. I was so confused. I was like, I've never worked with this nurse because she's a day shift nurse. But when that nurse started to pick up night shifts, I saw exactly what they were talking about. So this nurse would purposely pick up night shifts in order to take 2-hour smoke breaks and take naps in her car. There was one night in particular where it was me, 2 other new grads, and the charge nurse handling the ED and our combined unit together. We had no help, okay? It was some crazy night. I think it was the COVID flu RSV combo season, and it was just a hot mess. This nurse was gone for almost an hour and a half, all right? Nowhere to be found. We were unable to contact her. And I was like, you know what? I've had enough, all right? I ain't looking out for Shorty. She ain't looking out for us, clearly. So I reported it to my manager expeditiously. Okay, expeditiously. And where is she now? She's no longer with us. Not no longer with us, but she was fired, you guys. She was no longer on the unit. I came back a week later. I was like, what happened to so-and-so? Why isn't she? I saw her name was erased out. They said, oh yeah, she got fired. Oh. Okay. When I made that video about how to handle different situations as a nurse, I like to play the game. All right. I learned that, being the rah-rah girl, being the one acting out, like, no, that cannot be me. I have a license. I have an image. I have other things that I need to uphold. I'm going to have to play this game the way they play this game, and I have to play the long game. All right. I'm not going to crash out and pull her aside and do all that stuff right now, but don't slip up around me. Don't slip up around me, especially if you're trying to get me off my game or you're trying to make it seem like I'm not doing what I need to do. Don't slip up around me. So yeah, that's the story time, y'all. Make sure that you go to your manager and make sure that you chart everything. Make sure that you go to HR, okay? And stay on top of your stuff.
Story time of how everyone was trying to find the unit snitch, and it was me the whole time. If being a patient advocate equates to being a snitch, then hey, call me a snitch. So I do want to start by saying that I have never owned up to the fact that I was the one that reported this nurse. Even though there was so much conflict and drama about who it was, never owned up to it because I did not want to be retaliated against. However, when I drop this, everybody is going to find out at the same time because the For You page is too local, okay? So if you know, you know. So anyways, let's get right into it. So there are 2 specific nurses that are very important to the story time. So let's call them Gabby and Liz. So for background, Gabby is a night shift nurse, okay? This is gonna be important to the story. And Liz is a day shift nurse. At this time, I was working day shift. And also, all 3 of us nurses are new grad nurses. So all 3 of us worked at an adult oncology unit. If you don't know what oncology is, it's basically cancer patients. However, when we did have a low census, we would get all types of patients. We would get med surg, we would get like step down, psych, you name it. We've seen all types of patients on my unit. So with that being said, let's talk about the patient. I'm not going to share everything because of HIPAA purposes, but I will share what's important to the story. So I was getting this lady who was getting admitted from the ICU. Long story short, she would have these episodes of where she would need PRN Benadryl. While she was in the ICU, she was on a Benadryl drip. However, to come on my unit, we did not accept drips at all. So they discontinued that, and then they would give us IV pushes PRN, which I think were like Q30 minutes. So when the patient needed these PRN Benadryl IV pushes, it would be at random times. Like even though it was Q30 minutes, sometimes she can go 45 minutes without Benadryl. Sometimes it could be like 30 minutes. Sometimes we'll have to call the doctor and get an order for something sooner because she would have these random episodes. And these episodes were so scary because her body would go into hives. Her voice would start like being very high and squeaky. Like it was just kind of scary. She has gotten a workup done in the ICU. However, they still didn't know what the etiology was of why this was happening to her. So when she came onto our unit, she was there for almost 2 months. However, because we worked on an oncology unit, that's normal for patients to stay that long because a lot of patients are, inpatient. They have to have inpatient chemo. Like we're so used to patients being on our unit for a long time. And this patient was so pleasant, you guys. With everything going on, she was always positive. She was so nice. She would even apologize for ringing the call light. And I don't think she should ever apologize for calling us nurses when she needs help or when she's having these episodes. But again, she was super nice. And then also her husband was so supportive and nice too. So because she has been on our unit for so long, all of the nurses had her as a patient. And we would kind of all work together to help her. So if we see that she's ringing ringing the call light. We kind of know what the situation was. So if I'm available, even if I'm not her nurse, I'll go do the IV push for the Benadryl, you know, to help out the nurse, because we are like a 5-to-1 ratio on this floor. So one specific day, I was in the med room during shift change. I was only in the med room to return the meds that I had in my pocket for the day. So in the med room was me, Gabby, Liz, and one other nurse. Gabby and Liz are really tight, okay? They are always seen doing TikToks together, like they're super close. Liz and I both work day shift. However, we're not that close. I'm pretty quiet, so it's kind of hard for me to like get that close with my coworkers. But yeah, Liz and I, we both work day shift and we are cool with each other. We're just not that close. Gabby and I, we don't have a relationship. I just know that she's just another nurse on night shift. However, Gabby is really popular on the unit. So Gabby comes into the med room giggling, like she's just cracking up. And Liz was like, what is so funny? Like, why are you here? You know what I mean? And mind you, this is shift change, so like 7:45 p.m. So she's like, oh, do you know the Benadryl patient that we have to give IV pushes to every 30 minutes or so? She was like, well, she just rang the call light and she said that she needed Benadryl. She's getting hives. So I gave her an IV push flush. You don't know what that is? It's just water. Gabby says that she told the patient, okay, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go get your Benadryl. She comes back, pretends that she got the Benadryl, and she's like, yeah, I have it in the normal saline flush. I already had mixed it in. I'm gonna go ahead and push it through your IV. And then she said she pushes it and she tells the patient that it was Benadryl. And she came in the med room laughing and cracking up, saying that it worked. The patient said that she felt better. And basically she was laughing because she tricked the patient. Mind you, Gabby and Liz were cracking up, and I did not find that funny at all. That was not funny to me. She was bragging about how much it worked and she knew the patient was lying and how could she feel better if it was just a normal saline flush. So honestly, that annoyed me. I hurried up and returned my meds and I left the med room. Part 2 of how everyone was trying to find the unit snitch, and it was me the whole time. So anyways, I go home and then I return back to work the next day. Mind you, I was not this patient's nurse at this time, okay? I've only had her about 3 to 4 times because I told you guys before, she was on our unit for like a good 1 to 2 months. It was a long time. But yeah, I didn't have the patient the day before or the day of when I came back. But when I came back to work, it was honestly just like a deep feeling in me to where I'm like, that was not right at all. Like, regardless, that was just so messed up to do. You don't do that, even though it worked, quote unquote. At the end of the day, do your job. If there's an order for Benadryl, give it. And mind you, this is a new grad nurse, so this was very concerning for me. So the next day at work, I get my updates from my patients, and then I go talk to my manager and the supervisor. I go into their rooms and I close the door behind me. And I basically tell them straight up, I need to let you guys know what event happened last night and the nurses that are involved. I let management know exactly what the nurse Gabby said, who she said it to, and everybody who was in that room, like who were the witnesses. I obviously asked for them not to tell anybody that I was saying anything because I didn't want to be retaliated against. I already told you guys in the beginning that Gabby was very popular at work. So you guys, the next day at work, Gabby was still bragging about what she did. I want to say she told about 3 or 4 other nurses around me, okay? I was there, but I think she thought because I was very quiet and reserved, I wasn't going to say anything. She was even bragging into that she told the charge nurse that she did it. I don't know if she ever did, if that's true or not, but she was bragging, saying that she told the charge nurse and the charge nurse was laughing about it. So at this point, Gabby is making it seem like everybody's on her side and she did the right thing. Popularity means nothing to me, okay? If I think that you're doing the wrong thing, I'm going to report it straight up. And at the end of the day, I relate more to the patient than I do to my coworkers. So because she thought she did the right thing, I thought I did the right thing too. I reported it. So surprisingly, I got really good feedback from management after I reported what happened. And they were like, thank you so much for coming up. Nobody has told us at all. Nobody reported it. I was the only nurse that actually did that. I was the only nurse that, you know, stood up for the patient and advocated for the patient. And you guys, I didn't go right in the morning to go talk to management. I did my first rounds. I went to like group huddle. I did all of that first before I went to go talk to management. So I was kind of hurt that nobody else would report something like to me that's so big. As a nurse, you should never lie to patients, and you should also never withhold meds that you have an order for. Anyway, so I went through my shift, okay? Everything was cool. So the nurse Gabby was coming back tonight, okay? The same day she's coming back at night because I told you guys she was night shift. This is the only time I've seen my supervisor do this, but she stayed until night shift came. At this point, I don't know what happened because we did shift change and I'm heading home. I have to be back the next day because I'm working 3 in a row. So I go back to work the next day and Liz comes up to me and she goes, OMG, did you hear what happened? And I'm like, no, what happened? And Liz was like, somebody snitched. Somebody snitched on Gabby and she got fired. Y'all, Liz was like appalled called. Like, she was so upset because this is her bestie. This is her nurse bestie. They did everything together. They used to talk all the time. You know what I mean? They had a good relationship. Not gonna lie, you guys, because she was popular, I did not want any retaliation, so I had to act surprised. So basically, she gives me a rundown of what happened. Even though I know, I'm still gonna act like I don't know. You know what I mean? I gotta play both sides. So Liz tells me everything. She's like, this is what she did. This is the patient. And then I was like, well, what she did was wrong. You know, like, you don't do that as a nurse. And then Liz was like, yeah, I know, but like still, like, you know, trying to still have Gabby's back. All I say was, yeah, I feel you, and I walk away because this conversation's over. Y'all, I kid you not, the next 2 weeks, everybody's trying to find out who snitched on Gabby. And I'm being so two-faced at work. I'm like, I have no idea. I wonder who it is. Anytime they bring up a nurse, I wonder if it's that nurse. You know, I'm not gonna put the blame on somebody else. I'm always like, I don't think they would do that. I don't think they would do that. No, I can't see it. And remember how I told you guys there's another nurse in the room? They kept trying to say it was that nurse in the med room with us, but I kept having the nurses back like, I don't think so. She's so quiet. She's so reserved like me. She stays out of things. So not only was I denying it, I was also like trying to say that it wasn't other nurses too. Part 3 of when everybody was trying to find the unit snitch, and it was me the whole time. So as I mentioned before, at this time, everyone was trying to find out who snitched. Even though Gabby had been fired immediately, management did a really good job at doing internal interviews, and they were really picking nurses out to talk to them and try to see who else was involved and who else has this type of thinking. So over the course of several days, Liz, the nurse that was also in the room with us in the med room, and also the charge nurse got questioned and brought in. Other nurses too who are not a part of it have also got brought in for questioning to kind of see what other people know on the unit. So as you can see, it was causing high anxiety for people on the unit. So during this time, I was not working. I had already mentioned to you guys, I worked 3 in a row, so I had a couple of days off. So when I came back to work, everybody was freaking out and they're like, OMG, did you get called in? What did they tell you? You guys, I never got called in because I was the initial person who told. So of course they don't have to talk to me a second time. However, I couldn't say that I did not get talked to because it would have been suspicious. So I did end up telling my coworkers that I did get called in on my first day back. Unfortunately, nursing can get so toxic. It sometimes honestly feels like it's like high school all over again, just with adults. So I had to protect myself from retaliation. And also another reason why I did not want to let people know it was me is because this behavior was not going to stop. They would just stop doing it in front of me. So I wanted them to be comfortable with doing this type of stuff in front of me because, hey, I'm the snitch. And I would for sure snitch for another patient again if it means that I'm advocating for them. So if anything, if this type of behavior was going to happen, I'm the best nurse on the unit to witness it. And you guys, the person that was telling me all of the information and the unit T was Liz. I never said that I was to be trusted. So this drama did go on for a couple of months because nobody admitted it and nobody knew. There was just, I guess, too many suspects. I wish I can also say that this ended well for the patient, but it didn't. The patient was never notified of this adverse event. They were not notified at all that they were given a placebo. Even though the event became a part of report, the patient had no idea. And unfortunately, what Gabby did only caused for the patient to be second guessed at all of her symptoms. And unfortunately for the patient, she can feel when a lot of the nurses did not believe her symptoms anymore. I remember she even had a mental breakdown and wanted to talk to the charge nurse and give her a list of names of nurses she wanted as her nurse, and some nurses she wanted nothing to do with because she felt like she was judged. It was honestly a really sad situation, and it sucks that it was my own coworkers who made her feel this way. If she did not need the help, she would not be there, okay? Nobody wants to spend 30 days in the hospital racking up all of these medical bills for nothing. In regard to the nurses that knew what was going on, which was the nurses in the med room, they did get written up for not speaking up. And the night shift charge nurse also got written up too. As for Gabby, again, she immediately got fired and they reported her nursing license to the board.
The first psychopath I ever met while working in the psych ward was a child. And let's just say that he had me so fooled that by the time I actually found out what he was in the ward for, the hairs on my body rose. I didn't want to be anywhere near this kid. He really played me. And this is gonna shock you. So this kid in the ward, he's like 10 or 11 years old. And unlike a lot of people at this particular psych ward, I liked working the pediatric unit. You had certain people that were assigned to certain units, but I was a floater. I worked on the adult unit, the geriatric unit, and the kids unit. And I always have a special place in my heart for the youth. Because a lot of times when they come into the psych ward, they're in the middle of their teen development, or maybe they're dealing with traumatic homes, things that have less to do with them, and there's still hope, there's still wet cement, and they can still be formed. and smoothed out before their personalities and character starts to harden into unresolved issues that turn into drug use, more aggressive onsets of mental health disorders. A lot of the things I see on the adult unit. And those people can be helped too, but it's just harder. So I meet this boy on the unit and he had just came in, so we hadn't got shift report on him yet. I'm doing rounds. I always like to do rounds first where you have to go and see where each patient is, because that was a time where I get to introduce myself to patients, start off the shift with a good rapport, also kind of get a scope on who the problem people might be, but get ahead of it. I like to relate to people. And then I meet this kid who's the psychopath, and he's very kind. He's like playing with Legos and some cartoons are on, the other kids are around. He's being very nice to the other kids, laughing. He even is like sticking up for a kid who took somebody else's seat. In my head, I'm like, oh, I really wonder what he's here for. Can't be anything too damning. I mean, anybody can be a decent human being, but when people start to show empathy for others and consider them over themselves, that's a trait of a good person, especially in children. So anyways, the shift continues. I run group with the kids and he's raising his hand, answering questions about how to have good coping skills and how to identify triggers. You know, he's one of the brightest among the bunch. And then when it's time for me to chart on the kids, I have a certain group that I'm assigned to, and I ask them about their time here, about how their meds are, their home life, if they're ready to get out, if they have any suicidal or homicidal ideations, you know, the whole gambit. I get to know them. We kind of really strip things back. And so I went to go talk to him and interview him. He's telling me about his day, telling me he ate good, that his meds are working just fine, he's sleeping good. And I'm like, okay, you know, we're getting around to what brought you in here. And he's just like, well, let's just say family life is very tough right now. And you know, he had just came in that day, so I didn't want to pry open too much. I just want him to feel comfortable, let his guard down, and know that staff is here to help him. So I relate to him. I'm like, yeah, it can be really tough with family sometimes. Everybody has their issues. And I could tell he was a little more guarded, but we got a lot of information out at that time. So I'm like, okay, we'll kick it tomorrow. He just got here. So I'm going about my shift after talking to him. Thank you, man. I'll see you later. He was going to his room for a nap. I said, I'll wake you up before dinner. Then I'm walking back to the nurse's station and I see my fellow techs and nurses waving me back into the nurse's station room like, Jay. I'm like, can't be nothing. Maybe we got some crazy dangerous patient coming, or who knows? I had no idea. So I go back there and they're like, did you just get done talking to what's his name? You know, the psychopath kid. I'm like, yeah, why, what's up? They're like, did he tell you why he was in here? I said, well, actually, no, we didn't get that far today. And he just told me that, you know, family issues. And they're like, yeah. Did he mention that he has a dog? And I'm like, no, why would that be relevant? You know, completely oblivious. And they're like, read this. Y'all, I go into this boy's chart. And the reason why he was in the psych ward is because he took a drill from his father's shed. Trigger warning for all animal lovers. This is your warning right now. Fast forward this many seconds. He proceeds to take his father's drill, and while the dog was sleeping, he drilled a long nail into the dog's jaw and bolted him to the ground. Then he goes upstairs and threatens his older sister with the same nails. And as she screams, thank goodness her parents were on the way home and coming into the house to where they see their dog in a pool of blood, whimpering, only to discover their daughter, once they get upstairs, pinned up against the wall in sheer horror, screaming as he's holding this drill coming closer to her. And he's laughing. They tackle him and call the police, and ultimately he ends up in our psych ward. So instantly I start reflecting on the amount of time I spent with this young boy and what his interactions were like on the unit. And for those of y'all that don't know what a psychopath is, peep the definition. The narcissism and manipulation and dishonesty was top tier. I was like, yo, ain't no way. Like, is this a fabricated story? Like, do we have proof? Y'all, they showed pictures. So I'm like, wow, okay. So we gotta address this tomorrow, because yes, we do end up telling the kids like, hey, we do know why you're here. When we talk to them, we'll let them say their version of it and things like that. But sometimes, depending on how they come in, especially if they're violent or if they're acting out, like, we cut straight to the chase. Like, listen, this ain't no camp. This ain't no place to not reflect on why you are in this predicament, whether you have something to do with it or this is trauma related. We're gonna be honest so that we can make progress. And so the next day, Same old, same old. That kid's good. And I'm just kind of looking at him and I'm like, yo, like, this is going to be very interesting to bring this up to him and see what he has to say. But we got to talk about this. And none of my other coworkers wanted to have this conversation. So as interested as I was in doing it, they were like, go, you go do it. Tell us. You know, after we read this, we wasn't even trying to go up to them. A lot of them had dogs of their own, were dog lovers. They were like, we ain't having it. So I go to talk to him later on in the day because I let him wake up, get acclimated, have a good group. I'm like, all right, you know, it seems safe to go in. Like, what am I about to find out? So I sit down with him and I say, hey, so I know we talked yesterday. You know, you're telling me that you were here because of some family issues. Is there anything more you want to tell me about that day? Let's go back there. He's like, nah, I really don't want to go back there. It was a dark time and I actually don't really remember. I think it could be the meds. He starts making excuses and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, well, what about any pets? Do you have any pets? Y'all. Soon as I asked that question, it's like I said some deep ancient spell that woke up the real him, because instantly he's looking at me like this. And I'm like, and I'm not taking the bait. I'm like, at the end of the day, boy, like, you's 11 years old. Unless you about to be a demon and make me start floating up in the air, you can catch this work if you're really feeling froggy. All in proper patient crisis prevention intervention, too. I ain't gonna do nothing crazy. I'm like, I did read your chart, and I think it's important that we talk about why you're here and where this behavior is coming from. Can you get into it? He's just... So I say, now I'm concerned, because beforehand you were open and sweet and participating, but now you're looking at me in a way that makes me feel unpredictable about what you're going to do. And I hope that this isn't leading anywhere negative, because you've been making such positive progress. We can get through this if you're willing to talk about it. You're in a psych ward. There's still hope if you want to address the issues going on in your life. Then he starts like on some Dragon Ball Z Kamehameha. And I'm like, yo. And then he just starts screaming at the top of his lungs. So I'm calling the other staff to come down. They're rushing down and he's just sitting there screaming, powering up. Everybody's trying to calm him down. He's upset in the unit. Kids coming outside their room, seeing what's going on. Other kids with mental illnesses getting agitated that have auditory issues. And so we're like, hey, if you don't quiet down right now, we're going to take you to the quiet room and we're going to let you chill out in there for a little bit. The quiet room is more of a soundproof area that each unit has. You lock the door, they can't get out. You got to monitor them, but it helps to, if they're acting out, not disrupt the rest of the unit while also allowing them to ventilate, because they can't do it forever. He doesn't care, so we're taking him to the quiet room, lifting him up. He starts kicking, screaming, swearing, all obscenities, talking about what he's going to do to us, talking about how he's going to cut off certain parts of our intricate body parts. Like, it was just like a huge flip and switch. And after that day, I looked myself in the mirror and I said, man, you never know what you don't know. And I think I just met a psychopath. That was one of the craziest experiences I ever had on the pediatric unit. And probably one of the few stories where I can actually say that a kid needed to be in there and psychologically evaluated. I don't know what behavior surrounding his family life led up to those decisions, or if he was just some rogue individual. I truly don't have any supporting information where if his parents were involved with anything that led to his traumas or anything like that, because doing that type of activity is a very specific type of behavior in children that tells you more. But either I'm not remembering because it was so long ago, or we didn't have the information. But let me know what you think about this one. Do you think you could work on the psych unit with a kid like that?
I caught my coworker at the hospital having an affair on her husband with the doctor, and this is how I found out. I'm not going to be naming any names or hospital locations because I ain't trying to break up families, but oh my gosh, you're going to want to stick around for this one because the tea is piping. So there's this one nurse that I worked with. She was married and had a 2-year-old daughter at the time. And we knew that she was having like some issues with her marriage just because she had like been telling us some stuff. And a lot of the nurses suspected that she may be having something going on with this doctor just because of the way they interacted at work and whatever. But she firmly denied it. She's like, no, absolutely not. I would never have an affair on my husband, like especially with that doctor. Ew, that's disgusting. So we were like, okay, but you could kind of tell something might have been going on. Okay, like I'm going to demonstrate for you how she would go ask this doctor a question. She would lean over his desk. Oh, Dr. So-and-so, we have a patient. Okay. She was handing off a report to me one day, and we had these little phones that we used, and that's how we communicated with each other. Like, you know, you would ask a doctor a question that way, or you could send a message to the lab, whatever. Usually when you hand off your phone to another nurse, you're supposed to log out because this is like confidential information, right? She didn't log out. She didn't log out of her phone. She just handed it to me. I didn't realize she didn't log out. So when I go into my phone to ask someone a question, I see the last message that was in there was to the doctor from her. And it's just there. What do you want me to do? Not read it? It says, meet me in the stairwell down by the lab. Dun, dun, dun. This stairwell could only be used by employees, that you had to have a badge to scan in to go down to the stairwell. So it was like not a lot of people used it. It was a very low traffic area in the hospital, if you know what I mean. Baby, I didn't stop there. I had to keep reading. I had to. Meeting in parking lots, in closets, in the hospital. Like, babes, it was scandalous. And so that's how I found out. Now, I will tell you, I am not a homewrecker, and what they did was really none of my business, even though she handed me all of the information. So, and they ended up getting caught anyways, just based off of their pure sloppiness. So, but you would be surprised how often this happens. I have so many stories. Drop in the comments if you work in a hospital, if you've experienced anything like this before, because the stories are wild.
So story time about how a nurse lied on me and said I did not perform a surgery that I actually performed. So if you don't know me, my name is Dr. Ruthie, and I am both an obstetrician and a cosmetic surgeon. And the way that I practice obstetrics is I do it as an OB hospitalist. That means that I take 2 to 4 shifts a month in a hospital, and I deal with the emergencies that come in, okay? So one certain day at a certain hospital in the depths of Texas, I was on call, and an emergency came in that required an emergency C-section. So although that patient had a doctor, I performed the emergency C-section. I'm usually quiet when I get in a room. I'm calm, I'm quiet. I get in and I scrub in, I get in, I look at the anesthesiologist. They tell me to go. I have the baby out in 30 seconds. I deliver the baby. I do the surgery. The surgery was done in less than 12 minutes. Boom, went back to my room. A couple of weeks later, I get an email from administration that there was a complaint that I did not appropriately take care of a patient and I did not perform an emergency C-section. So here's the problem. This was not a vaginal delivery which could be delivered by a nurse or by someone else. This was an actual surgery. I am the only OB in the hospital. So who delivered the baby? That is the question. Who delivered the baby? Don't mind my little curling iron burn. I don't even know how I got that, but so who delivered the baby? So an investigation happens. They look at the cameras. They see me getting to the OR before the patient gets there. They talk to the anesthesiologist. The anesthesiologist said they looked me in my eye. We made contact, and I was able to give in the go to do the surgery. Everybody else says, obviously, I was in the surgery because who delivered the baby. My signature way of doing C-sections, I like to make sure that the incision is perfect. That happened. So what happened? The problem is that this nurse hates the fact that I exist. And there are lots of hypotheses as to why she hates me, but she has done a lot of things. She's lied a lot, but those things were not objective. They were very nebulous. They could fluid reasons why she would lie on me. And I never really took her to task. But this time, I knew that there was a lot of evidence to show that she was lying. So if you are in healthcare, or you are a physician, you know that people lie on you, especially if you're a woman, especially if you're a Black woman. They do not like the fact that we are in positions they don't think we belong. And I know this because when I was a resident, I had a horrible experience. Like, I was treated like the bottom of the scum, the scum on the bottom of your shoe. That's how I was treated. And years later, people will send me messages like, yeah, I know you were treated so horribly. You know, the Black girls were treated one way and the white girls were treated one way. Or I would get messages like, we knew you were something special back then, and we knew that's why you were being treated like this. So if you are being treated, you're not alone. You know, one of the things that is isolating is if you really believe that this is because of something that you did. No, it's something about them and their perception of who you are and where you should be in life. And most people cannot fathom the idea that Black people are intelligent. Black people deserve opportunities that they think you don't deserve. And so they will make up things, like literally fabricate things to ensure that your career is stopped and dead in its track. And they won't succeed. But I thought I would go on this rant because something similar happened to me this weekend, unfortunately. And unfortunately or fortunately, I caught it early and I documented. Please, 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 if you're in healthcare, I'm going to be like my Nigerian mother. Please write it down. If it wasn't written down, it didn't happen, okay? Make sure that you're covering your tracks, looking at times, looking at timestamps, making sure that you're doing your job. Please don't give these people even a little inkling to be able to see weakness in the work that you do. But I love y'all. And if this has ever happened to you before, please write it in the comments because, ciao.
I snuck in the bathroom to tell y'all one of the techs is sleeping with one of the nurses' husbands. Okay. The tech is telling everybody on the floor, like, oh, she over here, like, rah, rah, rah. Like, she in control of her man, that her relationship and her marriage is so sweet. But I'm over here sleeping with her man. This tech is relatively new. You know, she just finished her 90-day probationary period. Let me tell you, the tech got receipts, y'all. She got receipts. She got photos of her and the nurse's husband. Like, I mean, we all know the nurse's husband. Like, you know, she has a picture of them on her phone. He comes and brings her food, you know, all that cute couple shit or whatever. Yo, the most disrespectful part of this is that her husband had asked her to get this tech a job. And he presented the situation like, hey, I have a friend who just needs a job. Would you mind getting them a job at your job? Because that nurse is really cool with the director of nursing outside of work. You know what I'm saying? So they got her a job. You know, the nurse asked the DON, and the DON got her a job in the same place, working the same floor. And she waited until after her 90 days to be like, I'm sleeping with your man. She got photos. She got where he be sending her money. Y'all know Zelle don't lie. Zelle got your full government name. And she got photos. And she just telling everybody. And she's like, oh, what's she gonna do? Is she gonna fight me? She not gonna fight me. I'm gonna press charges. And I'm just like, how do y'all come to? It couldn't be me. It couldn't be. I don't even know who I would murder. If it would be my husband or if it would be the freaking mistress. But let me tell y'all something. That nurse, she's playing it cool, okay? Mum's the word from her. No retaliation. I'm pretty sure she's plotting something because there's no way you gonna come to my job and embarrass me like that after everybody knew I was the one who gave you the job. Do you know how embarrassing that is? How that looks? Baby, you know, I don't work on the floor, so, you know, this ain't got nothing to do with me, baby. I'm gonna stay away from the mistress, because you, nurse is an OG. You already know a lot of people ain't gonna be freaking with her. And me as a traveler, I'm gonna mind my business in this little corner. But I'm gonna tell TikTok the tea though. Crazy.
This woman went from being my coworker in the psych ward that I used to work at to being a patient that I had to take care of. Now, let me just start by telling you, this nurse was not nice. I'm a pretty agreeable person. I can work with most people, but she was somebody that I dreaded working with. Why, you might ask? Because she was not nice to patients at all. Like, you got some workers that just don't like their job, that might be a little short with patients, but she was mean, vindictive, spiteful. And I never exactly knew why. She didn't have the physical capacity to defend herself. So a lot of times when she would antagonize patients and then run into the med room, we'd be stuck to deal with the patient's violent outburst, often leading to somebody getting hurt or the patient being unnecessarily medicated as she's on the phone with the doctor asking for something to be drawn up for something that she antagonized. And nobody would put her in check at all. That's something I didn't understand. Now, that was like my first year working in psych. So I was assessing my bearings. I was making decent money at the time for me being 19 years old. So I wasn't trying to ruffle any feathers like that. And I didn't see anybody above me doing anything. So I'm like, whatever, I guess this is just the culture of the workplace. But after watching her for a while, I'm like, yo, this woman is a coward for real. She would come onto the unit and be asking who's being violent, who's upset today. Like, girl, you looking for trouble. And she always seemed to avoid the physical consequences of a patient coming at her, except like that one time where a patient actually did and she had to miss some. That's a whole nother story. If y'all want to hear that, y'all can let me know. But let me go and get to the part that y'all here for, how she ended up being a patient. Now, this is the first psych facility that I worked at when I worked with her. And after a couple of years, I was tired of how things were running there and I decided to move right on along to another ward. And the next ward was a little better, but you know, same shit, different diaper. One day I come into work and I see my old coworker who was the nurse. Now, when I worked at the other ward, I didn't have no hair. I had short hair, if you can imagine, but my hair was a little bit longer, not as long as it is now, but I had locks. So, you know, I looked a little different. And I saw the nurse on the floor, but she had on regular clothes. And I'm thinking like, oh, she must be here to visit somebody. But then it clicked that it wasn't a visiting day. Then I looked down at her feet and saw she had on the grippy socks. I was like, oh. I was, for one, not prepared for that type of awkwardness. I'm like, yo, is this woman gonna recognize me? And I just ripped the Band-Aid off. I'm just walking into work. I'm like, I'm not even gonna say nothing. Well, clearly not gonna say anything. That's not something that you're allowed to do. Hey, I know you and where you used to work. Like, that's such a violation. But if she were to acknowledge me in that way, like, hey, then it would be completely fine. But I wasn't trying to ruffle no feathers. I was just, you know, living my life. We crossed paths. I look at her and she looks at me and I look at her and she don't recognize me. And I think it was the hair. And I'm like, whew, you know how when you look at somebody, you can tell they kind of get that light, that spark, that knowingness in their eyes. But then as I look a little deeper, I'm like, oh, she ain't all the way there. Turns out Shawty, who was a med nurse, became addicted to pills. She had got divorced, her daughter left for college, and I guess the pills replaced the people. It was a very sad state of affairs. Up until that point, I haven't seen anything like that. And all I could think as I looked at her, saw her going to groups, saw her going to her room, I'm like, yo, you used to be a person that antagonized patients, that were mean and looked down upon people and took advantage of opportunities to use your power over them. And now, in your current existence, you're a patient. Y'all better be careful how y'all treat people out here. Y'all better be careful of the energy y'all putting out in this world, because you never know when them tables gonna turn like a DJ and he might not be playing your song.
Hi, I'm Sydney and I work in a psych ward. If you didn't know, lactation is a possible side effect of some antipsychotics, and that'll be important later in the story. But today we had a patient, very tall guy, very big guy, and he was getting a little agitated. Luckily, this patient hasn't been an issue. He's been super nice and like compliant with his medications. But today he was getting really agitated, very labile, switching from like screaming, laughing, crying. He was all over the place. And after like multiple attempts of redirecting him and like de-escalating, it got to the point where we needed to give him some medication. And he understood that. So we brought him to his room. We were like, hey, we're going to have to give you an injection. And usually we give injections like in your glute, like in your butt muscle. But he's like, no, I want it in my arms, and just takes his full shirt off. And I'm like, you can just roll up your sleeve, but okay. So he's sitting on the edge of his bed and we give him the injection. He's cooperative. And he goes, wait a second. Is this the medication that makes you lactate? I was like, no, that's not this medication. Don't worry. And he goes, no, wait a second. I feel something. And he looks down at his chest. He goes, I feel something in my chest. While he was talking, my coworker who was with us is turning around, like taking her gloves off. And the patient stands up and he grabs his nipple and goes, I'm lactating. And as he says that, my coworker turns around, and my coworker is very short and this patient is very tall. And when she turns around, she's just met with nipple to the face. My patient starts screaming, I'm lactating, I'm lactating. He chases us out of his room, grabbing his nipple, screaming, I'm lactating. Luckily, we had a lot of staff there still because we had to give him the injection, but he's running around the unit and he says, somebody get me to the birthing unit. I got babies to feed. He's like pushing on all of the exits. He's like, I gotta get out of here. I gotta help those poor babies. And eventually, after running around a little bit, the medications kicked in and he sits down and he goes, I could have been a hero and you prevented that.